Say the word nuclear, and you can almost hear it. The silence, the disaster. Nuclear. The word embodies the idea of a danger so great, so unstoppable, yet completely invisible. When you hear about the word, the disaster Chernobyl, you probably envision a complete disaster, a meltdown, an explosion followed by a mushroom cloud of radioactive material and ash that spreads, kills, and mutates everything in its path. And with Fukushima, headlines screaming, alarms blaring of radioactive water spilling into the ocean. Proof, right, that nuclear energy is too dangerous to trust, too dangerous to be used to make electricity. I would have imagined glowing waste barrels, deserted towns, and invisible aerating radiation. I was sure nuclear had killed millions. These thoughts and these ideas are so intertwined with our emotions that they're parallel to fact. On April 26, 1986, during a late-night safety test of Unit 4 reactor at Chernobyl nuclear power plant, a series of reactor design flaws and a combination of brutal human error led to a buildup of steam, followed by an explosion that released radioactive material. 2 workers died that night. 2 brave workers, with 28 more first emergency responders and staff following in the days and weeks after the accident. Over 116,000 people were evacuated from the 30-kilometer exclusion zone around the plant, and an additional 220,000 after the event from areas that were deemed unsafe and deadly. Later on March 11, 2011, a magnitude 9.0 earthquake struck Japan. This led to a massive tsunami which towered over Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant's sea walls, flooding backup generators and cutting power lines, rendering cooling systems useless. To cool the reactors, engineers fought back with what they had: portable pumps, fire trucks, and eventually seawater after a series of explosions. The clearest long-term health effect of the Chernobyl nuclear disaster was a 3% increase in thyroid cancer among children exposed, mostly younger people, at a younger age near the reactor when it exploded in the area. That led anywhere from the disaster in 1986 to today, anywhere from hundreds to a few thousand deaths. Fukushima was a different disaster, though. There has only been one death, just one traceable death to a worker roughly 7 years after the disaster. Oil, gas, biomass, even wind, all are far deadlier than nuclear. And nuclear, throughout all of these accidents, don't come close to any of these. I used to live just a few miles away from the Diablo Canyon Power Plant in California. I spoke to Paul Tarek, a nuclear reactor operator who currently works there, about what it took to get to his position and the safety and instruction behind it. Paul Tarek was a National Olympic decathlete who in 2010 retired and to pursue his path of nuclear energy. He began with 10 months of intense training, followed by 2 years of just plant walkthroughs before becoming a nuclear operator. After spending 7 years as a nuclear operator, he finally earned his license in 2020, where he works now, to be a reactor operator, where you actually control how the electricity is produced. But his training doesn't just end there. Every 5 weeks, he undergoes up to 40 hours of simulated training, of simulations of everyday reactor operation to high-level, dangerous situations that could occur. This goes to show the level of commitment and safety and training behind the people who work, behind the engineers at these plants. They're prepared for every single situation. Most of these situations, they will never see, they will never face. When I lived there, near Diablo in San Luis Obispo, when I moved there in 2016, environmental activists had won a legal battle to shut it down in 2025. Funny enough, though, just a few years later, as I regularly visited the farmer's market, where they sell fruits, vegetables, and some really good tri-tip sandwiches, new activists, or possibly even the same ones who changed their minds, where they're advocating with their signs and with their tents for Diablo Power Plant to remain open past its decommission deadline in 2025. This plant in Diablo Canyon produces holds over 1,500 of California, San Luis Obispo County's highest paying jobs and produces over 18 billion kilowatt hours of electricity yearly. That is more than enough for 3 million Californians and prevents nearly 7 million tons of CO2 and greenhouse gas emissions from being released into the atmosphere. But in order to make so much electricity in such a power-dense area, they need to use nuclear fuel rods. But these rods, they don't last forever. You can't get an infinite amount of energy from them. So of course, we produce something, and that something is waste. Nuclear waste ranges anywhere from low-level to high-level waste. Low-level waste, which is what makes up the bulk of all nuclear waste, is usually comprised of gloves, tools, or exposure suits that are used near the reactor or reactor components and are almost unnoticeably radioactive. Moderate-level nuclear waste, as the name implies, is moderately radioactive and is comprised usually of reactor parts or things that are produced, such as resins, in the production of nuclear power. But then there's the high-level waste, which is the really dangerous stuff. This is the actual spent fuel that comes out of the reactor after being reduced in radioactivity and can't be used as efficiently anymore. These pellets or rods that look similar to pencil graphite or pencil lead are then moved to big pools of water nearly 40 feet deep, where hundreds of rods are stored at a time to dissipate radiation and heat. Standing next to one of these spent fuel pools with hundreds of highly dangerous and radioactive rods is equivalent to experiencing as much radiation as you would be at cruising altitude inside of an airplane. After spending some time in these pools, this waste is then moved to tall concrete casks, which is where most nuclear waste nowadays is being stored. So when you think of nuclear waste, think of towering concrete casks, easily able to withstand targeted bombings and repeated full-scale train impacts, holding pellets, blocks, or rods of waste, and being made of reinforced concrete, steel, and sometimes ceramic that can hold nuclear waste for hundreds of thousands of years or even more. If you were to put all of this high-level waste into an area the size of a football field from all reactors since the start of nuclear power commercialization, it would only be 16 yards deep. What's even more interesting to me, though, is this. I want to bring you guys through a little thought experiment. If you used only nuclear power since the moment you were born to when you died to power anything from your cell phones, TVs, your lighting, your heating, your AC, your cooling, your refrigerators, your washing machines, even your electric car, everything that you use on a daily basis, if all of that power came from nuclear energy, how much waste do you think you would produce in your entire lifetime? You would produce roughly a can of waste. Just a single can. Nuclear power plants can meticulously track every single radioactive particle. Can anyone claim the same thing for any other energy source? Where's the spent fuel and waste at these plants? It's in the secure spent fuel pools and the towering dry casks. Now, what about fossil fuel power waste? Take a deep breath and think, oh wait, it's inside you. It's in our atmosphere, the ground, in the ocean. It's even in your blood. It's everywhere. Not to mention the toxic byproducts that this fossil fuel energy production produces, such as mercury that stays toxic indefinitely. Let's take a moment to think, though. You all might be wondering, what about the two most common sources of renewable energy, or at least the most popular ones that we think of when we imagine clean renewable energy? Solar panels and wind turbines, right? I mean, they might not be as energy dense as a nuclear power plant, but aren't they safer? Aren't they better for the environment? Well, these so-called environmentally friendly energy sources aren't so environmentally friendly after all. Whether it be the fact that by 2050, wind turbine blades, after being discarded and not used anymore for 20 years, are ending up in landfills, and by then, we'll have almost 50 million tons of turbine waste, or the fact that solar panels, through their disposal and manufacturing, release heavy metals such as cadmium, lead, and chemicals like hydrochloric acid, which are detrimental to human health. These so-called environmentally friendly energy sources aren't so environmentally friendly after all. I'm not saying that these are extremely bad energy sources. They're much better than coal, but when compared to nuclear beats them by a long shot. The real killers are the particles we breathe from burning things, not the atoms we split. Fossil fuel waste drifts through our air and into our lungs, and pollution from energy sources we thought were the solution into future generations and our environment. I learned this by living in the shadow of Diablo, watching a community argue itself from shut it down to please don't. It's not a romance with nuclear. It's a commitment to reality through fewer emissions, steadier grids, good jobs, and a proven, dense, round-the-clock energy source that keeps hospitals open on windless nights and with less people. The question isn't, is nuclear perfect? The question is, what keeps the air the cleanest, the planet the coolest, and the most people alive? I want to invite you all, as I leave you all today, to, instead of relying on doubt and fear, run the facts. Take a deeper look. If we can do that, the silence behind the word nuclear won't be the hush of disaster. It'll be the quiet of cleaner air, steadier grids, and fewer goodbyes. The catastrophe that wasn't becomes the opportunity that is. An energy source worthy of our hopes, not our fears. Thank you.